Good day, everybody. Welcome back to the flight deck. Today we're going to be taking a look at the British Aerospace Engineering 146. This is going to be broken up into probably 3 different videos covering some different stages of flight. In this video we're going to cover the pre-flight and setup of the aircraft. We're going to go over the cockpit layout, the EFB, and how to get the aircraft ready for engine start. So as you can see, this is a 4-engine airplane. It is a unique design, and it is basically a short-range regional aircraft. We'll just swing around it now and we can take a look. There is 4 engines, as you can see, 2 on each side. Cargo doors on the right-hand side, passenger door on the left, all of which are openable, including the back service door. She has a T-tail design and looks a little bit stubby. This is the 100 version. There is the 200 and a 300. The 300 is longer and 200 sits in between. But she's high wing, T-tail, and she has a good short landing and takeoff, which means she can get into a lot of smaller airports. She's a very interesting plane to fly, but there is a lot to it. This is very much built in the pre-FMS days, although the one we're flying, we will be using the FMS for the basic navigation. So let's hop on board and we can take a look and start getting familiar with the layout. Alright, so here we are in the cockpit. As you can see, there is a lot going on. So what I'm going to do is run through the different sections of the panels, explain what each one kind of contains, and then we can start doing our checks to get her ready to go. So we're down in the pilot's seat, or the captain's seat. So starting off on our far left, we have the EFB. This is added in to make everything kind of more easier for the single pilot to handle. In it you can have your operational flight plan. I'll bring it up for today's flight, and it gives you some basic information such as our origin and destination, our airline code and flight number, the routing we're going to be taking, and various information about the winds and our fuel and cruise. We're actually cruising at 24,000 feet today, not 3,500, and the distance to go. And we can bring up the raw SimBrief flight plan data or just have it on the summary. It has a moving map. Centered on our aircraft, we can scroll in and out using the zoom button and the zoom out button. So we've got good situational awareness. If you have Navigraph, you can log in and let me just do this now while we sit here. Unfortunately, it does not keep your self logged in over the long term. So you kind of have to do this login process each time it comes up. We're just logging in to do that now, and you got to type in the code. So HYD 6KR6P. All right. So this becomes very useful when you are looking at taxiing and moving around airports, because you can now type in the airport you're in. We're in Jersey. We'll go to the taxi charts. We'll bring up the airport information, and there we have it there. So you can have a bit of a moving map, and you can just grab it and scroll it around, so you can see where you're going and bring up your charts and see where you are on your charts. There's notes you can make for various things, and then you've got your settings. 24-hour clock, your SimBrief information you can put in, brightness and theme for the display. And then when you come over to the aircraft, you've got your standard states. You can set cold and dark, ready for takeoff or turnaround state. There's some announcements here that you can do, and you can trigger your weights, kilograms, pounds, or kilograms, total passengers, total fuel, and by clicking on these you can set your doors open or closed. So moving on from the EFB, we'll leave it on this page here. We can come down to the captain's right side or left side panel. This has various things. It has some lighting and illumination buttons here, and it has the radio volumes for the different aspects. Clicking on the little compass card here, we can shut off the EFB. And if you want, you can click on there and put your armrest up. You clip paper charts and stuff in here for normal flight in normal operations. So that's where the EFB goes to replace it. You can move down to the front here. This is the pilot setup. We have our artificial horizon, HSI, airspeed, our clock, altitude, backup, artificial horizon, backup altitude, various gauges that we're going to use, brake pressure and stuff along those lines. We then have the center panel, which is all our engine instruments from oil pressure and oil quantity to our N1, our exhaust temperature, our N2, fuel flow and fuel tanks. We also have our flap indicator, various spoiler indicators, and this is our caution, our master caution panel here, and a little booklet card with V speeds, which we will be using in a minute. We'll come over to the co-pilot side or first officer side. All the flight instruments are duplicated. There's also the MWS control panel, and we have here the TMS, the thrust management system, which we'll get into a little bit more in depth, but this is to help with the engines. We also have pressurization gauges and outside air temperature gauge here that we use just to verify that the aircraft is being pressurized. And then down on his right side, same light controls for his side, radio controls, and then we also have here the flight data recorder input, so you can input your day, your month, which leg of the flight it is, and your flight number. And that is everything. There's the oxygen for the first officer, similar to the one over on the pilot side, and the main oxygen supply switches are over on the first officer side as well. Moving down the center pedestal, we have the FMS on both sides. Weather radar and terrain display is here in the center. More on that in a minute. We have our VHF radios located here and here for COM 1, COM 2. We have our throttle quadrant, 4 engine throttles. The fuel cutoffs are located below, flaps and air brakes. And we have our manual trims for our rudder and our aileron, and our trim wheel here for our elevator, and the indicator is right there. Disconnect switches for the trims. We have our parking brake switch. We have below that our yaw damper and controls for the automatic system. We have our ADF radio, our transponder, brake temperature indicator. Down here some lighting switches and a manual slide here. We can do cabin secured for landing, cabin secured for takeoff. Our first officer will handle that as we move along. Moving up to the overhead. On the lower overhead panel, we have our fuel system. We have our cabin call instruments over here. The electrical panel is located here. Our APU control, our engines, pressurization is located here. Anti-ice system is here. Air system for our packs and our APU bleed air. Down here we got some panel lights for turning these panel lights up and down. And on the bottom here we have our seat belts, our wipers, our rain repellents and windshield wash, flight deck emergency lights, and our landing lights and runway taxi lights. And then moving up to the upper panel, We have some miscellaneous switches, including yaw dampers and master power, anti-skid, lift spoilers. We have hydraulics in here for our hydraulic pumps. Fire switches and fire handles are all located in the center for the 4 engines. This panel here is our test panel, so once we go into MWS test mode, we can actually push all these and it'll run through all the warnings for both sides. You'd actually do that each and every day, just to make sure they're going on first flight of the day. Next to that, we have our general light switches, logo lights, entry lights, smoking lights, beacon, and strobe. Under that, we have air conditioning, which is the air conditioning for inside the aircraft. So we can set temperatures and which fans are on and which fans are running. And that is the layout of the cockpit. And one last thing here above the center panel, which is the glare shield. This is your autopilot, your nav radios, and your course selector and stuff like that. And that's it. There's a lot to go through. So generally speaking, the initial aircraft were flown VOR mode, so they would have flown from VOR to VOR, using those for navigation. I find for myself it's a bit much trying to fly the aircraft as well and everything that goes along with it. So we're going to be using the flight management system, and when we get to that point, we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through the steps. So the first thing we have to do is our pre-flight flows and our flight deck safety inspection. So we're going to start basically down here. This is again the radar. We're going to make sure the weather radar is turned off, and we go to 15 plus 15 on the tilt, so its beam is pointing upwards at the moment. This has a very limited function at the moment. It will be, once the weather radar is implemented across the sim for all the developers, this will work. Right now it just kind of gives a little bit of a moving map with the airport locations on it. We'll turn it on so you can see it. Down here the train display, same thing, doesn't work at the moment, but eventually you'll be able to do the train display, and it will show the train as you come in as well. So the transponder, I'm going to go back to that, and that is down here. So the transponder, as you can see, is set to standby. Air brake is in, flaps are in, and the landing gear lever is confirmed down. Air brake is interesting. It's actually at the back of the aircraft. It's a clamshell, and I'll show it to you before we take off, just so you can see what that looks like. Alright, let's establish power. So we're going to go up to the master overhead, or the main overhead panel here, and once again we're going to do a bunch of switches. So down here on the electrical, we want to turn on batteries 1 and 2. And now we're going to check the volts, make sure we're pulling minimum of 24 volts for each battery. So we're going to go to battery 1. There's about 27. Battery 2, about 26.5. So that's good. That can now go off. We're going to come over here to nav lights, and we're going to set them to high intensity. We're going to set the no smoking sign on auto. We're going to drop down to the lower panel. Flight deck emergency lighting is going to go to arm. We're going to come down now. Make sure our parking brake selector is set towards the yellow system, which it is. It's canted over this way. We're going to go up to the top panel again, and we're going to turn the yaw damper masters 1 and 2 on. We're going to turn avionics masters A and B on. We're going to come over to anti-skid, turn it on. One point I'll make about the buttons with 3 dots, they're 3-way switches. I've got up, center, both. The regular ones are up and down. So you can tell which ones are 3-position and which ones are basically just 2-position switches. So the yellow and green lift spoilers, which you have here, are going to go on. Bus ties. For AC and DC. Which are down here on the electrical panel. There's AC and DC. So the bus ties are going to go to auto. And you'll see lights going on and off as we do this as well. Standby inverter and generators, which are these two here, standby inverter, standby generator, are going to go to arm. So 3-position switch, they're currently in off. They're now armed. Generator 1 and generator 4, which are down here, we're going to make sure they are in off reset, and they are. The APU generator button right here, we're going to set that one to on. And we're setting that on because as soon as we fire up the APU generator, or the APU, we want the generator to kick on. We're going to turn on the left inner fuel pump. That provides fuel pressure to the APU. We're going to come up to the APU, again located on the top center of the lower upper panel. We're going to turn the master switch for the APU to start. And we're going to see the RPMs spooling. And we'll see the exhaust temperature spooling up as well. And if we pop outside, here's the APU. We can see the fumes. There's the intake for the air. We can see the heat coming off it, and we can hear it spooling up. And when it reaches 100%, it takes a second or two, and everything just kicked over. So APU power is available, light has come on, and we can hear things are now running inside the aircraft. It takes about 4 seconds once it reaches stabilization for it to kick on. So we're going to come down here to the air supply, and we're going to switch APU air on, and we'll hear all the fans start pushing air. Once we turn on the packs. Now on the ground we only need to do one pack, both 2 for in the air, 1 on the ground. So we're going to do 1 pack, and the way they say you do it is pack 1 on an odd day, pack 2 on an even day, just to spread the load. So today is the 5th of May, so we're going to turn on pack 1 as it's an odd number. And there's the air. So we're going to carry on with our initial pre-flight setup. The aircraft is powered up and everything now. So for the pre-flight, cockpit lights as required. So we have the switches here for panel lights on this side. We have dials here for the lights down here. First officer, who's now joined us after his walk around, we have switches there for his lighting. If we come up top, we have the dials here for the overhead panel. And this one here is for the glare shield. Lights on the glare shield. So we're going to leave them where they are at the moment. So we're going to come down here now. We're going to check out the master warning system. This is a 3-switch position button. There's the full out mode where it is now, which is on the ground. There's a center mode for flight and a full push in for test. So we're going to push in. There we go. So we're now in test mode. Buttons are flashing and everything has lit up. We can check. There's no lights not working. And the cancel buttons work. So we're going to now pull it out to flight mode in the middle position. There we go. So it is armed and ready to go. And going up top, as I mentioned, you could do tests. So if we want to test, say, the speed horn, we can push the button. There we go. And you'd actually run down all of these, but we're not going to do that for this one. So it's in the middle position. Ground tests will say have been performed. We're now going to come back up to the overhead. We're going to come over to the hydraulics and check to make sure they are working. So the DC hydraulic pump, which is the direct current one running from power from the batteries, we're going to turn on. And on the yellow system, we're going to see a slow pressure increase in hydraulic pressure. We're looking for about 2,500 pounds per square inch. It's just going to take a minute to get up. And it's also pressurized the brake system, which is engaged at the moment for the parking brakes. So that light's gone out, and you can see we're just about 2,500, which is what we want to see. We're going to turn it off, and we'll see that drop, but the brakes are holding pressure, so that is a good thing, and it's going to drop back to zero. We're now going to turn the AC pump to on, and this will pull off the power provided by the APU and the engine generators. And hear it running. It's going to move a little bit quicker, and there we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come over to the PTU pump. This is a power takeoff. As we are not running the engine pumps on engine 3, the green system won't pressurize, but in case of that failure, we have the PTU system here to pull from the other side and vice versa. So if we turn that on, we'll see the green side start to pressurize, and we can hear the PTU running in the background. And there we go. So that is working. So both of these pumps will now go off. And there's the warning of low hydraulic pressure. So engine anti-ice, we need to have engine anti-ice on for engine start. So we're going to come down here to the ice protection panel, and we're going to turn on engine anti-ice for all 4 engines. Flight deck emergency lighting will come on. Yaw dampers 1 and 2 will come down here. It is this button down here on the trims. We'll turn it on, and you can see yaw damper 1 and yaw damper 2 are on in green. That's your confirmation that they are working. And we're going to go over to the FO side. If we look down, sorry Roger, here's the oxygen panel, and we're going to turn the main valve on, and we'll see the oxygen system pressurized. This is for the emergency oxygen. There we go. It's all open, and we can come down and test his regulator. We got the test. We saw the little white X appear. And if we come over to my side, we can do the same thing. There's the test. There we go. So we have oxygen on both sides now. So our doors are open, cargo doors are open, and the stairs are down. So we can have the passengers loading. That is all good. Parking brake is on yellow and is pulled, so parking brakes are set. We're going to go back up to the overhead, make sure that switch hasn't come back on, so everything's good. We have pressure. Thrust levers, we are going to come down and check as well, and make sure that they are in fuel cutoff, which all 4 are in fuel cutoff. The hydraulics, we're going to verify that everything is now off. That's the next one up. So pumps off, APU is off, and that is off, and that is off. So all hydraulics are off. Down to the fuel system. Which is here. The center tank transfer, we're going to switch that on to auto, so it will pull fuel from the center tanks out to the wing tanks to be fed into the engines automatically. as we fly along. Pressurization system, we want our mode selector on automatic, which it is. The green light is illuminated. The discharge valves are in normal mode. And we're going to set our cruise level for pressure. So cabin is on the outside, cruise level pressurization is on the inside, and the arrow will show both. So we're going to use this knob here, and we're going to turn that to 24,000 feet, which means the cabin is going to pressurize to about 5,500 feet. And we'll monitor that on the pressure gauges down on the first officer's side. Ice detection switch is the guarded switch here, so it doesn't accidentally get turned off. So we'll turn on ice detection. Fuel quantity. Fuel gauges are down here, and we have enough fuel for the flight. Center tank is empty, about 3,700 kilograms of fuel on both sides. That is good. Fasten seatbelt signs. We're going to come up to the overheads. It's on the lower one. Seatbelt signs are now on. Flight data recorder. You don't really have to touch it, but you would ensure that the date. Let's get a better view of it. You'd ensure that the. Sorry about this. It's a little bit tricky to get to at times. Let's try doing it this way. You see the date 05 for the day, 05 for the month, leg 1, and flight number 000. You can reset this to if you want, but you don't have to. We are going to come down to the which one is it? There it is. We are going to come down to the transponder, because what we can do is we can set our flight number in there for our flight ID. So for the tutorial which we're doing, it'd be JF123 for Just Flight 123. We're flying BCC 5556, I believe it is. Let me just go back here to our flight plan. BCC 123. Not sure why BCC, but that is just what it happens to be. So we'll put that in here. So it's a 4-button switch. First push will give you the number, second push will give you the first letter, third push will give you the next letter. So we want B. Let it flash once and it moves over. So you're going to click it 3 times. B, C, and then there's 1, A, B. Oop. If you miss it, you can do it again. 1, A, B, C. BCC, and then it's going to be flight 1, 2, 3. There we go. Hit enter, locks it in, and then we will click on the ATC FID button, puts it back into the transponder code mode. So that is done, and we are back on ATC. So now we're going to step over to the thrust management system. So let's go over to the FO's side, and here's the calculator here. So this, not only does it give you certain performance numbers, it will help you with throttle settings and stuff like that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to power it on, give it a couple seconds, and then we are going to do a test by pushing this button here, and we'll see it run through it. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to set it up for takeoff. So we're going to set the outside air temperature. So here's your OAT here. We're going to leave it at 15 degrees. But you would set it according to whatever your air temperature is. And this is just a simple up-down dial. We're then going to set TO, which is takeoff mode. And then it says we're going to need an N1 of 91.5%. We're going to come down here. We're going to set our TGT to our maximum exhaust gases of 840 degrees. And these are the numbers we're now going to enter in on our monitor bugs. So we're going to head over and set that up. So here's the engine gauges. And using these dials, we're going to set 91 on each one. I want to go the other way. And these are what we're using to set engine power. They're a little finicky with the scroll. So the engine power will be set according to what's on here. It is done manually, but the system will assist, as you'll hear and see. If you get close to the bugs, the system will nudge them into place and hold them there. And then down here we want 840 degrees for each one. It does take a minute. There's 840. This is probably one of the longest parts of the setup as we go, and of course everybody is climbing on board in the back. And then you start dancing around the actual number as you move the wheel too fast. There's also, once you're in cruise, there's a sync mode where you can sync it to the first engine, engine 1. And that way you only have to worry about getting engine 1 precisely set up, and it will automatically adjust the other 3 to match, which is handy. You're not trying to fine-tune 4 engines, you're just fine-tuning 1. And there we are, 840 degrees. So that is all set. Now if we come down to our card, this card is set for the current weight of the aircraft, and it shows our V rotation and our climb out speeds for each of our takeoff flap settings, and it will show our reference speed and stuff for climb out, and then down here we have our landing reference speeds for each setting for flaps as well. We're going to use this to set our speed bugs, as you can see, and this is the same as on the captain's side. We have multiple speed bugs that you can adjust around the dial to help with your indicators of where you need to be. You can easily set it though by just clicking on the card. So we're in takeoff, so up on the takeoff section we're going to click it. You can see all the bugs just set themselves. So you see here's your 121 and your 133 speed bugs, your rotation and initial climb out. And then down here you have your reference VREF and your VREF and your VTO speeds down here. This will change according to your weights, and with our flaps in 0, it's automatically assuming we're going to be on flaps 18. If we were taking off flaps 24, we'd need to have the flaps in 24 to let it know that's what we wanted. But those are our speeds set. And now that that's all done, we're going to turn off the thrust management system because we don't want it to interfere with the engine start when we get there. So now we're going to get the navigation side of the house set up. So the flight directors for the 2 sides can come on. The flight directors are up. The Nav1 radio is here. We're going to push the button for on. We're going to turn this DME switch to on, and then it will do a test. And there we are. It is now popped up and it is ready to go. So the nav radios we can set in our frequencies. So we are not using the radios for navigation, but we are going to use them to cross-check. So the first one we want is 109.4. There's 109 and we want 0.4. Now if we flip the switch down to pre, that's the preset, we'll be able to dial in the bottom one. So there's 113.35. So 113.35. So that's the next VOR in line is preset. We have the course. We can dial in as well. We're not going to worry too much about that since we're not actually going to be following it. We will use this for the landing. So let's dial it in for the ILS. If we come over to our charts and we bring up Liverpool, and we go to our approach charts, we're going to be flying the ILS DME runway 27. So we'll bring that chart up, and there it is there. So we can see that the frequency is 111.75. So we are going to want that, and we're also going to be using this beacon frequency as well. So 111.75. So we'll come over here, and we're not going to tune it in yet, but we do want the 266 degrees because that's the one we're going to be using. So we'll set our nav1 course here to 266. And what that does is if you look down here on our HSI, it's moving the yellow needle around. So when we come in to land, that's going to be our gauge here. We're also going to tune in the NDB frequency now, since it's the only one we're going to use. So 349.5. So here's our ADF down here. We're going to go on ADF 2, and that was 3, and then 4, and we want 9.5. And on ADF 2, we're going to turn it from off to ADF mode. This will show up down on this gauge because, well, we have nav 1 being VOR, or nav 2 we're going to switch over to ADF, and that will give us it won't give us a distance, but it will give us a directional needle to it. For VORs it will give a directional needle and it will give a distance here. It does the same thing countdown here depending on if we're going to waypoints and stuff for the other navigations. So the initial heading we're going to set, so to take off out of here, it is, I believe it's 263. We can go back to Jersey. We'll bring up the airport information. We'll zoom in. 263. So that's what we want to set as our initial heading, and that will be set by the white bug down here. And it is just a rough estimate of 263, which will go about there. So that is now set. We are going to arm heading for the autopilot. We are going to set our altitude. So our altitude is going to be set to our climb out. Sure why it's not letting us dial in an altitude. That's interesting. I've never seen that not work. Alright, we'll get back to that in a second. The RMI is set. We already set ADF and VOR. HSI source. So this one is important if you're using the FMS. If you are this switch down, it's going to use VOR navigation. If it's up on RNAV, radio navigation, it will use the FMS. So we'll set that up there. And we'll turn on the two voice radios, even though we won't be using them. There we go. And we'll put 122.8 the Unicom for VATSIM, and even though we're not on VATSIM, on COM 2. So that is all done. We will now set up the FMS. And that's there we go. That's the last stage. So this is the working title FMS. If you're familiar with it, you can set it up to import flight plans and everything. The only thing you can do on it is your flight plan and legs and departure and arrival. All the other functionality has been stripped out because that's done elsewhere in the aircraft. So we're going to do our position initialization. I'm just going to click on there and it copies it down. We can, not sure if you can put in what airport we're at. Yeah, it doesn't even want that. It just wants our initial position. We'll come over to the flight plan. And you can see there is nothing entered in. But what we're going to do is you can manually do it, but we're going to input the flight plan in. So we'll go index, next, route menu, recall flight plan from SimBrief. It's loading it in. It's going to ask me which of the VORs we want because there is multiples in it. So it's always going to be the first ones. They're the closest. So there's the next one. And that's now set. We'll hit execute, and that is all inputted and set and ready to go. And you can see we've already got our first waypoint in. If we go over to legs, it shows we're going from here to the Guernsey VOR to the SAM, which is Southampton VOR, then the Honley VOR. Go to the next page, then the LPL NDB, and then landing at the airport. Everything else is entered in somewhere else. And we can't even put in the winds. But that is all set up now, and that is our routing done. So we are here, and everyone is loaded on board the aircraft. And we are pretty much good for engine start. We're going to come up here to Pushback Express. We're going to plan out our push. Get that ready to go. We're going to bring it back, and we'll have them push us around the corner here, down onto the line. And then straighten us up. There we go. So that is now set. We can come down here to the aircraft. We can close the cargo doors, and we'll just get ourselves around so where we can see the stairs. Now that everybody is on, we can bring the stairs up. No, we can't. Just realized because the stairs are run by hydraulics, so we're going to come up to the overhead. We're going to turn on the AC pump. We're going to pressurize the yellow hydraulic system. There we go. We're now going to come back down, and now we can bring up the stairs. There they go. And they slide into their storage spot. And we can close the doors.
Cabin crew, arm doors and cross check.
Alright, everybody is on board. We're going to go back up and turn off the hydraulics. And I think we're going to leave it here for this one. We are ready for our pushback. Actually, let's finish off with the pushback and we'll carry on with the engine start on the next one. Alright, so we're going to go up to the beacon lights, which are located on the high up overhead. So the beacon light is now on. APU air is going to come off. Packs are coming off for engine start. We're going to come over here to the fuel pumps, turn on the other fuel pumps so they're now all on. Here is the engine starter. So we're going to make sure our starter power is in norm, which it is. It's in the middle position. And we're going to turn on the start master and get that ready to go. So we're now ready for the push. We'll remove the chocks and we can get the tug in to push us. So this is there's no push tug here, so it's just going to do it automatically. So we're going to release the parking brakes and start to push. So the aircraft is being pushed back. We're going to wait to start until we are out on the line and it's stopped. But that was the setup of the cockpit, getting everything up and ready to go, and making sure that the aircraft is in a state where you can fly it. Again, we are not using the VOR navigation. We're going to be running it with the FMS because it is going to be busy, as you'll see. There's a lot of things we have to do. So we're flying from here up to Liverpool. Hope you'll join us in the next video where we're going to do the engine start and get ourselves ready to go. Thank you very much for joining us. See you in the next video. Bye for now.